Well, at least I have something to distract myself. Oh yeah, that's what happened on release day. Never again. How about I learn about Darktide instead? It can't be that bad, right? What? Well, Crime Boss isn't coming to Steam until June. I guess I gotta lock in. Alright, crewmates, let's do this task.
Before I get started, this is not an actual guide. In fact, this is not a real video. Everything you see is my actual Payday 3 video. That's right, I made a Payday 3 video. Everything afterwards is an illusion. You're being tricked. Everything is a lie. The subclass. A specific setup within a class common in a handful of games. Often, they could change your playstyle or intended role in a party while maintaining the mantle of your current class. The creation of a subclass in a video game comes whenever you use a certain combination of skills, weapons, tactics, or other on an already established class that may put you in a role with a different playstyle. In Warhammer 40k Darktide, there are 3 seemingly intended subclasses for each class. The Psyker Psykinetic, known as the Fragile Wizard class and one class out of, as of the upload of this video, 4 classes. They have been nerfed compared to lore, due to it literally being 40k lore and the lack of proper friendly fire, which would be one of the common endings for Psykers. Still, they are very powerful and will still explode when casting too many spells. Their unique, warp-related magical abilities often come in staffs. Why talk about this in a Gunpsyker video though? That is due to the Psyker having a unique resource called Peril. This resource is used on various weapons and abilities on the class. What happens when you reach it past 100%? If you care about the proper name, it's called Perils of the Warp. Veterans have a similar gauge on the plasma gun, but you know, veteran. Gross. Anyway, the Psyker skill tree branches all depend on magic in their own ways. All Psyker builds cannot avoid using it. The first 2 sections of the Psyker skill tree lean towards what you possibly expect. The first third of the tree focuses on offensive sustainable warp damage, with venting Shriek and warp charges that reduce combat ability cooldown. Oh yeah, Brain Burst is there too. The second branch leans towards a more defensive support role, with abilities like the Telekine Shield and Smite, generally known as the crowd control stun everything blitz. I am not a fan of the shield. Lastly, there's the third branch. Wait, why did the music change? So, instead of expelling the magic normally, the third branch expels it into its regular attacks, warp or not. Judging by the artwork and an easier way just to get to the point of this video, let's just call this Gunpsyker. Now, what makes Gunpsyker special? Imagine a wizard, but instead of casting a spell, their wand or staff of choice is an equal heavy. In Darktide's case, you sacrifice your infinite ammo stick of doom for a gun, hence the title of the subclass. But think about it, it's a gun in the Warhammer 40k universe, and most don't have a charge time. Psykers have good unique tools at their disposal for everything, from crowd control to being coma food towards the big god emperor on Terra. Though in most cases they are least effective against monstrosities and bosses. There is of course Brain... I didn't even get to say Brain Burst, let me acknowledge it. It exists, okay? There, now let me try again, okay? Thank you. Trying again. There is Uncanny Strike spam with the Duelling Sword, which does a pretty good amount of damage while also applying the blessing, but also, though limited compared to the other 2 human classes, there's firearms. Guns are often more capable than the staffs to turn monstrosity and boss health bars into Cadia, with the aid of the skill tree of course. This is one of the points of the subclass. This is why I wanted to talk about it. The synergies of the skill tree and how it can play into Gunpsyker. There's a fair amount of ranged options and all of them are pretty good. The 3 human classes have access to common guns, but if you're playing Gunpsyker, you're probably using a variant of these 3 ranged weapons. If not, I won't judge. After all, the staff you pick decides the spells you cast. These picks were common not only on Gunpsykers, but also the other 2 human classes.
Oi mate, you mentioned Cadia, right? Just my veteran instead, gun witch. Be a boring class with more guns while being boring and
No! This general overview of Gunpsyker is completely valid due to the fact that I play and have played Arc Damnation, even regular and Arc Maelstroms. Trust every comprehensive word coming out of my mouth because this is a YouTube video from a YouTuber with more than 0 subscribers that plays a video game. My ego is larger than your brain. So Gunpsyker. It's simple. Get a gun, right? Yes, actually. Though while maintaining the moniker of Psyker, magic is still at your disposal. You have your Blitz, which all options take the grenade slot and cost peril, your combat ability, which is also magic, and your Keystone, which is a magical buff for your class that slightly alters your playstyle. With that padded long introduction out of the way, there's nothing else to talk about. I've been maining Gunpsyker ever since patch 13 with the skill tree update, so why not take a look at what puts the Psyker in Gunpsyker. Psyker's skill tree is usually built around your loadout. Bear in mind, while you can use any skill with Gunpsyker, some skills can only be reached by selecting certain blitzes or combat abilities. The first segment of the tree gives you many options to replenish your toughness depending on how you use your magic. As Gunpsyker, most often you may not use warp damage or generate peril a lot of the time. Though, if you are using Assail or normally Force Sword, Soul Stealer is extremely useful for you. Another general skill I use for my builds is Battle Meditation. Another skill I recommend is Empathetic Evasion, which counts you as dodging ranged attacks on all critical hits, be it melee, ranged, or sail. Last skill I could recommend to aspiring Gunpsykers is True Aim, and its requirements are actually very generous. You can proc it taking the cap off of 5 Poxwalker-shaped bottles, with any weapon that cleaves through all of them in one hit. Let's get started on blitzes. Blitzes take your grenade slot and are infinite use at the cost of your peril. The default blitz is what people call the worst one, and that is Brain Burst, or Brain Rupture. This was the first blitz added to the game before patch 13's skill tree update added better options. Its usage is self-explanatory on what it does. It bursts a brain, helpful for big enemies in a horde shooter. Though problem, it doesn't one-hit kill every special. Some enemies like the Mauler, Rager, and even all Ogren do not fall after one cast at its base damage. Usually the director may spawn them as a whole patrol, making them the horde in the horde shooter. So upsides. The primary fire can be held, for example, see an enemy far away, peek the corner, primary fire, break line of sight by using cover or not. As long as your cast doesn't get interrupted, enemy hopefully appears on your kill feed, if you chose them instead of a Poxwalker. Instant downside. It highlights around the head of the enemy you targeted, for not only you, but your teammates too. This is for the whole cast. If you have someone that can aim, most often they may steal that kill from you. If you are confident in your teammates aiming and stealing your kills, the secondary fire can be held and have a cast prepared for any person you see. It could be anything on the list, or a veteran once they turn on proper friendly fire. Still an elephant in the room, and that is the cast time. It's still pretty long. To alleviate this, you have Kinetic Resonance, which makes your brain burst faster after you use any of the 3 combat abilities. Kinetic Flare also exists, but it's instant but random on any attack as long as the initial attack does not kill. Unless you are using Kinetic Flare to make up for the downsides of some weapons, Brain Burst is not often picked on Gunpsyker, especially my Gunpsyker. Not only that and the fact you have a gun, but the other 2 blitzes exist. During the production of this video, Smite got a buff, specifically Empowered Psionic Smite. The original script was going to have me go on a whole tangent about it not being good for damage, then whispering closely into the mic like I was a hot anime boy, telling you how to make it do slightly more damage, but I digress. It's still a support to stun pretty much everything but bosses blitz. Yes, a stunning or staggering crowd control is considered support by some. Anyway, it does not take 5 to 10 business weeks to kill even the common Poxwalker. Some members in the community are or were not fond of Smite users due to it being seen as a cast to win, with its ability to stun almost everything. Everyone's experience online may vary, but in public runs there could be a small chance you can have people rage and or leave due to your choice to use Smite, as the user usually has 2 other weapons at their disposal. Not only that, but it also doesn't go well on some machines, at least in former updates. If I know if you're one of those people that leave because of Smite. Yes, I use Enfeeble. It's a small damage boost, but I don't see the problem in using it, especially with current Empowered Smite. It affects more than just your team's damage output. From all the sources I've read, Lightning Storm does not affect Smite's secondary fire. Oh yeah, did you know that there's a primary fire for Smite? I didn't. Let's move on. Smite is like Weezer's 7th studio album Ratitude when stacking Soul Blaze talents and Blazing Shriek on top of it. Not only is it for extra damage, but it can sustain the Empowered Smite, assuming you build your lightning that way. Thanks to the buff on Empowered Smite, it's now extremely easy to farm that kill line if you want a confidence boost. It's like they buffed it for the new penances. You can also use Smite as a utility to kill trash around the heftier opponents. With the little time window they have stunned after the cast, you can dish out damage with other weapons. Anyway, it's a good blitz. I love it as it is. It's still not my first pick though. Please don't nerf EP Smite. Though it's not as broken as it used to be, it's still really good. It's basically its own weapon. The primary fire tosses a shard into the air and it follows your crosshair. It homes in on an enemy you somewhat aim at, and hits them. It does kill, but it may take more than one shard depending on the circumstances and the enemy. What makes it the best blitz for me is that it's still active as long as the shard is in the air. You can use other weapons while Assail is doing its thing. Not only that, but it also pierces most targets, making up for the lack of crowd control some weapons may have, especially on Gunpsyker. There are a few downsides, of course. There is the fact that it has an ammo pool that recharges over time. Another I see is that the shard stops the moment it touches Carapace's armor or an enemy shield. One can be that the primary fire requires you to look at or in the direction of the target. Also, you cannot inspect your hands like with Smite or Brain Burst. The upsides though, there's too many. It is also the only blitz that allows critical hits with the visual feedback being a purplish trail. Using it in combination with a loadout conserves ammunition you could be using elsewhere. The secondary fire increases the range, damage, and allows you to hit a specific enemy without sticking your head out of cover the entire time it's in the air. This comes with a higher peril generation than the primary fire, of course. Not only that, but holding secondary fire over a target also highlights a target's head, similar to Brain Burst. After it hits and or kills the intended enemy, it behaves similar to the primary fire shard. The shard is also capable of briefly staggering mid-tier harassers like gunners and ragers, allowing you to get a few hits in before they remember who they're fighting. Assail is amazing with Gunpsyker. Whoever let the shard stay active while another weapon is in use was cooking. Anyway, let's move on to combat abilities. Venting Shriek is the augmented variant of Psykinetic's Wrath. It provides a cone of magic capable of staggering the enemy. The higher your peril, the stronger the stagger, alongside the modifier skills it offers. It quells 50% of your peril and is a get out from exploding free card if you do it during the generously timed perils of the warp animation. Creeping Flames is the best augment for this ability. It has a large range and goes through walls, which is really good. The other augment though, nobody uses, and for a great reason. With Gunpsyker, you have less options to generate peril for the ability. In a case you'd be dependent on Creeping Flames, you'd have to use Kinetic Deflection, your Blitz, or a 4-sword special attack very often. I'd also say using Scrier's Gaze, but one ability allowed at a time, people. Telekine Shield, or simply the Shield, is a common pick among regular and Gunpsykers alike due to its supportive nature. It is capable of blocking a good handful of things besides bullets. It even comes in a bubble or horizontal wall. The wall deploys at the angle you place it, and the bubble is capable of protecting others even if they are a floor under its placement. The shield is also capable of having 2 charges. I won't argue, it's a very useful combat ability. However, I will argue it's my least favorite of the Psykers. There are moments in the game where I thought a shield would have been useful, say a horde of gunners appears thanks to the John or Jane director. Not only that, but I would have to sacrifice the usage of my other combat ability if I switched to the shield. It also relies on positioning more than the other supportive class abilities. To put it short, I'm a very selfish player. I prefer the cooler combat abilities. Let's move on to the cooler ability. Scrier's Gaze, the Gunpsyker ability. It seems for the other 2 classes that if it's not a stealth ability, it's a temporary buff, often used with firearms. To put it in detail, here's the description. The peril buildup even gets to the point where manually quelling does nothing but keep you around the same percentage you quelled at. You can use this with a staff, those users do exist and I envy them sometimes. However, remember, this is Gunpsyker. If you're not using your blitz and or if your primary isn't a forced weapon, this is another one of Gunpsyker's ways of not making the peril go unused. The modifiers are pretty good, even if most of them only provide the bonus while the ability is active. By a 1-point difference, this is the most expensive combat ability to invest into if you max it out. As much as I wish this was closer to Sienna's Unchained class from Vermintide 2, this is still good as is. Especially with how critical hits, happen more often with faster weapons, I often use it with the Infantry Autoguns. This is a great ability, but it's missing, something. Currently, it's my favorite of the three. It even has a skull on the icon. Skulls are cool. Though, if you lean more on the use of your Blitz, you'd have to find the good balance between the two or quell before using the ability. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about Scrier's Gaze. It's a cool ability. Oh yeah, Keystones exist, so let's breeze through it, starting with Warp Siphon. Killing a named enemy guarantees a warp charge. This is every named enemy, and as long as your name is next to it on the kill feed. There will also be feedback, blue fire on the bottom edges of your screen. Despite being the most costly keystone if fully upgraded, Warp Siphon offers a lot of bonuses. The last two augments before the final augment add another method of gaining warp charges without having to kill a named enemy. Due to the skill itself having the cooldown reduction, I do see why it's most often used with regular Psyker builds. Though, the other bonuses are pretty good for cases like using Force Swords or your Blitz. Speaking of Blitz, Empowered Psionics is the next keystone. When I said earlier Smite got buffed, Assail slightly got affected by the EP buff as well. I mean, look at it. Upon successfully or unsuccessfully casting your Blitz in any capacity, an EP charge is consumed. The middle modifier makes you and allies in Coherency replenish 15% toughness on using an enhanced Blitz. The timing of its replenishment depends on the ability. Your choices for modifiers before charged up are between increasing your chance of proccing the keystone to 12.5% or guaranteeing it on elite kill. If you're not using Smite, I'd recommend going for elites. The last we have is Disrupt Destiny. Slightly armored horde enemies, rangers, ragers, maulers, all form of non-ogren or boss, shotgunners, and gunners within 40 meters of you, yes, the description is not accurate, get marked in blue. Kill them and you'll get a stack. The stacks decay by 1 every 4 seconds. With this short stack time, that could be a problem. However, I don't see a problem with that specifically since they are very easy to get back. Also, the augments are great to help with that. It can also randomly pick any target in your field of view, even through walls. And you have to go out of your way to get to there before your team does. Another minor inconvenience is that sometimes it picks another enemy while you're in the middle of dispatching the target you're at, though this was more of a problem before they changed the decay to 1 stack. Its original decay was all at once, similar to warp charges at release. Nowadays, it's easy to maintain unless you are wanting to consistently stay at max stacks. I recommend mostly or fully investing in this keystone if you choose to use it, especially Cruel Fortune to build up to max stacks at a faster rate. Personally, this is my favorite keystone. Not only does it offer quite a bit of bonuses, but it also highlights enemies for you and only you. Now that we took care of the big parts of the skill tree, how about we take a gander at the first 3 letters of Gunpsyker? Infantry autoguns, the equivalent of the common assault rifle. Columnus. The Columnus is a very fast and strong autogun, basically the workhorse of a Gunpsyker. It shreds any non-crusher enemy and is your highest boss/monstrosity burst DPS choice as a Gunpsyker. It nearly makes you as strong as a Gunlug or Ogren. Even without Scrier's Gaze, it shreds a lot of enemies in the roster, even more at close range. I mean, what else is there to say about this weapon? If you're using any other IAG, it's not the Columnus. If you're using any other gun, it's definitely not the Columnus. Oops. My use X instead of anything else, heated gaming YouTuber instinct kicked in, sorry about that. We got blessings. Commonly used blessings on the Columnus, at least, are Dum Dum, Death Spitter, and Fire Frenzy. Real quick, the only good thing about the crafting system is that it allows you to take blessings from other specific weapons of similar types. If you have something you want from an Agrippina or Graia, but you want it on the only gun in the game, you can get the blessing at the sacrifice of the inferior weapon. Anyway, it's a good gun. Disappointingly, there are 2 other non-Columnus guns I want to talk about today. The Lace Pistol, short for Laser Pistol, is a fast, high-ammo laser weapon. It's even the first secondary you get when you make a new Psyker. It does less damage but is faster and more easy to spam than other quick swap weapons. What it lacks in damage against Carapace and Unyielding, it makes up with crit chance and its ammo pool. Like, this has a crazy amount of ammo, though FYI, laser ammo is calculated differently from bullets. The Mark II and Mark X variants of this weapon take 2 and 3 ammo per shot respectively. Common blessings include Dum Dum, Ghost, and if you're feeling a little zesty, Infernus is also there. Personally, I love the weapon. It's not my first pick as a gunpsyker, but it's fast and nice for picking off long-range enemies like snipers and bombers, which tend to have softer armor than the enemies usually up close. Anyway, let's go to the next weapon. Oh boy, this is the main reason I want Gunpsyker in the first place. The Stub revolver is a quick-draw marksman weapon. As the last 2 words before weapon suggest, it has a fast switch time and is accurate with high damage. Depending on which variant you pick, you either have a faster panic weapon or a more powerful pistol you can aim with. The ammo capacity and damage on both variants are well enough that you probably won't even need to pick up a lot of ammo, almost never if you have a scavenger or a veteran on your team. Comparing our 2 current choices, the better variant is the 2A. It has more damage than the Mark XIV variant. It also has the ability to aim down sights and pierce through enemies in a straight line. It's basically the charged up Void Strike staff, but as a gun. Because the 41st Millennium is a dark and unforgiving universe, you have to load the bullets one at a time on this variant. That's like its only downside unless you cannot aim. The Mark XIV, however, has a speed loader. It shoots faster with its braced secondary action and has more ammo than the 2A. Lack of an ADS, no enemy penetration, and less space damage make it less optimal in comparison to the 2A. The most common blessing used on both variants is hand cannon. Anything that causes rending or brittleness is a go-to in almost all cases. On the 2A, surgical is used over Crucian Roulette. For the 14, Crucian Roulette is used over surgical. I've also seen point blank being used on either variant on fellow Stub users. It relies on quick switching after killing with melee, or using the weapon butt attack, still very doable with certain playstyle. Anyway, I love both variants of the Stub revolver, it's a great gun. Wait a second, did I mention melee? Something Psyker may suffer from is getting stunned by gunfire with such a fragile frame. Some options for getting fired upon is getting gunned down, taking cover or creating cover with the shield, or just to segue to this weapon, the Deflector blessing on 4 swords. There, I mentioned it. Psyker is currently one of the 2 classes capable of blocking bullets with specific melee weapons, the other being the Overhyping with the Slab Shield. Deflector has utility and is useful for advancing towards ranged enemies without cover and allows you to power through them. Like the shield ability, you sacrifice a slot. At least weapons have 2 for blessings. How about the weapon itself? The Obscurious and Deimos variants have nearly the same horde capabilities and access to the Psyker's sticky melee. It's similar to the chainswords. The Illysi variant has the best horde clearing capabilities of the 3, and its special is similar to the Power Sword on Veteran. The special melee has enough cleave to make up for the lack of crowd control Gunpsyker may have. Despite how much I praise the Illysi, my favorite of the 3 is the Deimos. While the push attack is capable of staggering a good amount of enemies, the second heavy attack on said variant does the same for everything except for monstrosities and bosses when it hits the weak point. This is yet another way you could generate peril as a Gunpsyker if you use the special attack. Also a great pick if you're using Kinetic Deflection, which is required to reach Disrupt Destiny. Common blessings used besides Deflector include Uncanny Strike. Other blessings seen are Shred, Riposte, Slaughterer, and if you're using Illysi, Bloodthirsty is also seen. Maybe if you're feeling a little goofy, Blazing Spirit is the most optimal on Illysi due to Bloodthirsty. I won't go too far into perks, but most picks on most weapons are more damage against the Maniac, Flak, or Carapace armor types. Personally, I use Flak and Maniac on melees if able. The Dueling Sword is the Psyker's other unique melee weapon. It's fast with fairly good reach, and powerful due to it being an assassin category weapon, provided you can aim. There are 3 variants of this Dueling Sword, but most often, Psykers I see using this weapon stick with the Mark IV variant. It has the superior heavies of the 3 and provides one of, if not the best anti-monstrosity melee damage Psyker can do. It can even kill Crushers and 2 heavy pokes in a semi-realistic scenario. Besides its assassin categorization, it also has access to Uncanny Strike, which you know, hit head more, thing dies faster, assassin weapon, get the picture? Tip: if your melee weapon has access to his blessing, use it, it's too good and effective to pass. Besides Uncanny Strike, usual blessings on the Dueling Sword include Shred and Riposte. Quick lesson: to count as a dodge, the enemy must aim for you and specifically you, then they must finish their attack animation. If they get interrupted in any shape or form, like getting staggered or killed, then those blessings do not proc. Anyway, it's a very good single target weapon. It has a better reach than the knife, so proc on dodge blessings are pretty alright here. Also, it's very good against Carapace armor, something most of Psyker's weapons that I've talked about struggle against. That wraps up our main loadout choices and common weapons on Psyker. What now?
Oh, come on.
Can this day get any worse? This is what you dragged me in for? According to Subtext 11C of the Gaming Content Creator Guidelines for Gaming Content Creation, if you make a video explaining a class or subclass in a game and you have more than 0 subscribers on your channel, you are legally obligated to show an example build you use for the class. Failure to comply will result in the community pulling you out into the middle of the street and putting you in a cartoon trap where you'll be like, "Youch." We here at Game Community Incorporated do not condone or support if you experience the same action after following our rules, yada yada yada, here we go. So loadout. Mark 6 Catachin knife with Uncanny Strike and Flesh Terror, both at rank 4. How did I get those modifiers? Sheer hope. How did I get the perks and blessings? Mechanicus level rid. My secondary in this build is the Columnus. Optimally, the Columnus is the only gun you are allowed to ever use in this game. It is your best bet for DPS against anything but Carapace armor. Next we got the skill tree. By the way, if I am moving too fast I will have the full build linked in the description. What to get out from the main biz is that you have Assail, Scryer's Gaze, and Disrupt Destiny. The couriers I'd say up to you, but my preference is 2 toughness and 1 stamina. Why stamina? Mainly for blocking. Since I'm running Disrupt Destiny, I had to get Kinetic Deflection. The peril you gain from blocking gets reduced with more stamina you have. Not only that, but also it makes every weapon tanky when you block. For me that means that I don't have to put too much effort into clearing the area before reviving. And more melee blows I can block from any melee attack that isn't an overhead strike. In short, 1 stamina curio is all you need to increase the effectiveness of Kinetic Deflection. Any more and it'd be overkill, like the difficulty in Not So Hit Game Payday 3. So for most threats you have, well, every weapon. Against armored opponents, especially of the Carapace variety, my knife is equipped with Uncanny Strike. It may falter if there are multiple in a group in a very confined area though. I still use it nonetheless. The strike doesn't kill them, hopefully the critical does for the bleed. Bleed is a funny damage over time that is the main reason I use the knife in the first place. Assail is usually there to make up for the lack of crowd control on my actual weapons. Since True Aim is very easy to proc and even counts gun and shard weak spot hits, I usually have a crit Assail at the ready. The Columnus is self-explanatory. I've talked about it a lot in this video. It's definitely a gun in the video game. Anyway, any and all criticisms or genuine questions to this build will be removed, ignored, or removed and ignored, because I am a YouTuber with more than 0 subscribers. So Gunpsyker. It's... okay. The subclass itself is considered a meme by some. A fun little because you can, and it comes in quite a few different forms. To me, it has the foundation of an actual subclass. Sure, a staff is considerably more optimal, especially Avoid Strike with Surge, but the options are laid out in front of you just enough to hold the label. It's as simple as switching your secondary to a gun, but when you get deeper, you can be a wizard with a gun. Wait a second, that's literally what it is! To stop myself from digressing even further, here's the pros and cons of my specific build. I've actually taken most of my notes through gameplay and reading the Psyker Athenium, a Steam guide by Pigex? Please don't blow my brain up with your mind. Thanks for putting together all the data in that guide. If you're looking to play Psyker at any level, regular or gun variety, it's a great read. It goes into detail on many mechanics and skills. It explains many parts of the class better than I ever would. Anyway, that's it. That's the subclass. Lastly, I'm going to officially rate it on the Hula scale, which is out of 10 and I'd say it's a 7 out of 10.